The large hall was buzzing with excitement, filled with people who had come to watch the talent competition. Bright lights shone down on the stage, making it look like a world of its own. The judges sat behind a long desk at the front, their expressions serious. They had seen many performances before, and most of them had failed to impress. Whispers traveled across the room as the audience waited, some talking about the expected favorites, others guessing who might surprise everyone. Backstage, a small figure moved quietly, barely noticed among the crowd of older, more confident contestants. The child was just 8 years old, holding a small case that contained the instrument they would play, or perhaps the materials for a special act. Every step seemed careful, measured, almost like they were walking through a dream. Their family watched from the side, hearts pounding. They knew this moment was special, but they also understood how difficult it was. The child had practiced for months, waking up early and staying up late to perfect each detail. Now, all of that practice was about to be tested in front of an audience and judges who rarely gave praise easily. Other contestants seemed larger than life in comparison. Teenagers with practiced routines, young adults with confident smiles, and even older performers with years of experience. The child looked small, almost invisible, yet there was a quiet determination in their eyes. They watched the performers before them, noticing the smiles of the audience, the nods of approval from the judges, and the excitement that filled the room. Instead of feeling intimidated, the child felt a little spark of energy. Maybe they could do something different. Maybe they could make everyone see something they had never seen before. The first contestant walked onto the stage. The audience clapped politely, and the judges nodded, but there was no real amazement. Each performance was good, some very good, but the bar for a truly extraordinary act seemed almost unreachable. The child waited backstage, practicing breathing quietly and keeping their hands steady. They thought about the first notes they would play, the first steps they would take, or the first move that would catch attention. Everything had to be perfect, or at least convincing enough to grab that moment of focus from the audience. Time moved slowly. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the next act. The announcer's voice echoed in the hall, calling out the name of the next performer. The child's heart beat faster. The family squeezed each other's hands tightly, knowing that this was the moment that could change everything. The child took one last deep breath, imagining the stage, the audience, and even the skeptical eyes of the judges. They knew that if they stumbled, it would be noticed immediately. But they also knew that if they gave their all, even a small spark of magic could shine through. The child stepped forward, almost hesitating as they approached the stage. Each step felt heavier than it really was, like the weight of expectations and hopes pressed down on small shoulders. When they finally reached the center of the stage, they paused for a brief moment, letting their eyes scan the crowd. The audience seemed large and far away, a sea of faces that blurred together. The judges' expressions were unreadable, faces locked in concentration, pens poised over notepads. Some judges whispered to each other, exchanging doubtful glances. They had seen many children perform before, and many times the results were disappointing. Despite all this, the child felt a calmness inside. There was a small smile, not of arrogance but of quiet confidence. They knew they had prepared as best as they could. Months of practice had led to this moment. It wasn't about winning or losing, not yet. It was about showing what they could do, letting their talent speak for itself. The audience waited, a hush falling over the hall. Even the murmurs faded as everyone focused on the small figure in the middle of the stage. The child opened their case and carefully set up their instrument, or arranged the items needed for their performance. Each movement was deliberate and precise, reflecting the hours of practice spent at home. The audience began to lean in slightly, curious about what was coming next. Some parents whispered encouragement to their own children, while others simply watched in anticipation. The judges scribbled notes but remained expressionless. There was an unspoken challenge in the air. Prove yourself, or fade into the background like so many others. The child closed their eyes for a brief second, listening to the silence. In that silence, they imagined the sounds, the rhythm, the motion that would come next. Their fingers moved gently, testing the first notes, the first steps, the first gestures. A faint smile appeared on the child's face, a sign that everything was as it should be. They felt ready, more ready than they had ever felt before. This was their moment to shine, even if it lasted only a few seconds. Suddenly, the child began the performance. At first, it was small, careful, almost hesitant. The audience leaned forward, trying to understand what was happening. The judges raised their eyebrows slightly, as if confirming their initial doubts. They whispered among themselves, saying things like, "It's too early to judge," or, "This might be one of those acts that fizzle out." The child continued, slowly gaining confidence with each movement, each note, each step. Something was beginning to change, though. The audience's attention sharpened, and a few people even leaned closer, curious about this quiet, unassuming performer. The child's performance began to grow in complexity and beauty. Every motion flowed into the next. Every note became more precise, and every expression on the child's face told a story. The audience started to clap softly, some nodding in rhythm, others whispering to their neighbors about the unexpected skill. The judges, who had been skeptical, started to sit straighter, their pens pausing in midair. There was a change in the energy of the room, a shift from doubt to intrigue. Backstage, the child's family held their breath, barely daring to move. They had seen the child practice countless times, but the pressure of performing in front of so many people was different. Every smile from the child, every small gesture of confidence, filled the family with hope. They whispered encouragement quietly, but mostly they just watched, letting the child find their own way. The room seemed to shrink around the stage, the lights brighter, the sound sharper, but the child seemed to move with ease, almost like they had been born for this moment. As the performance continued, the child began to explore more difficult parts of their act. A sudden shift, a faster rhythm, a more challenging note or movement. The audience gasped quietly, surprised at the sudden display of skill. The judges' expressions changed too. Gone were the doubtful looks. Now there were hints of surprise, curiosity, and even admiration. The whispers among the judges faded, replaced by focused attention. For the first time, they seemed genuinely unsure about what they were about to witness. Minutes passed like seconds. The child's confidence grew with every small victory on stage. Each movement was met with subtle applause, each note with quiet murmurs of appreciation. The audience was no longer polite. They were engaged, captivated by the unexpected talent unfolding before them. Even the judges, who had lost hope seconds before, began to realize that this performance was different. It was not just skill. It was heart, passion, and a level of maturity that seemed impossible for someone so young. The child paused briefly, looking up at the audience with a small, hopeful smile. That pause was enough to draw a collective intake of breath from everyone present. The judges leaned forward, eyes wide, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. The family watched, holding hands, tears forming in their eyes. They had known their child was talented, but seeing it recognized in real time was overwhelming. The small child, once overlooked and underestimated, was about to change the way everyone in the room saw them. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, the child continued, moving into the part of the performance that would truly define it. The notes became clearer, the steps more precise, the expressions more vivid. The audience was fully engaged, leaning forward, clapping, gasping, and even whispering words of encouragement. The judges, who had lost hope just moments before, were now wide-eyed, pens forgotten, watching in silent amazement. They had never expected this from someone so young, and it was impossible to ignore. The first part of the performance ended with a gentle flourish, a small but significant conclusion. The audience clapped, some standing, some whistling softly, all impressed. The judges remained quiet, but their faces showed the shift from skepticism to genuine surprise. The child took a small bow, breathing deeply, a mixture of relief and quiet pride on their face. Backstage, the family cheered quietly, overwhelmed with happiness and admiration. The moment lingered in the air. Everyone in the room knew they had witnessed something special. The child had started small, almost unnoticed, but had captured the attention and respect of an entire audience. The stage, which had seemed so intimidating moments before, had become a place of triumph. The first part of the journey was over, but everyone understood that the best moments were still to come. The small figure, once doubted, had proven that hope could be restored, even in the most skeptical hearts. The room had settled into a quiet anticipation as the child stood in the center of the stage. The first notes or movements of the act had been soft, almost hesitant, and now, with the audience's attention fully captured, the child began to show the depth of their preparation. The small figure seemed to grow with each passing second, not in size, but in presence, commanding the space with confidence that surprised everyone. From the judges' table, skeptical eyes tried to read the performance. They had witnessed countless young talents before, many of whom failed to meet the hype. The child's age alone made the adults doubt what was about to come. They whispered among themselves, glancing at each other, their notes lying untouched, pens hovering. The audience, too, leaned forward, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Parents held their breath, children sat with wide eyes, and even performers waiting backstage paused in curiosity. The child's hands moved with a precision that seemed almost magical. If it was a musical instrument, the notes flowed seamlessly. If it was a physical act or demonstration, each step, each motion was controlled yet fluid. The child's small size and age belied the skill that was now on display. The audience, once cautious and polite, began to murmur with appreciation. Heads nodded, some whispered, and eyes widened. The judges, who had lost hope seconds earlier, now shifted slightly in their chairs, beginning to notice the subtle brilliance of the performance. The child's expression was one of focus, not fear. Every glance toward the audience and judges carried a quiet confidence, a sense that they were ready for this challenge. Months of practice, every early morning and late night, had led to this moment. The child was aware of the skeptics, aware of the doubtful murmurs, but used it as fuel rather than a burden. This was not just a performance, it was a statement. Every movement, every note, every gesture was meant to show that age was no measure of skill, and determination could surprise anyone. At one point, the child paused briefly, letting a silent moment hang in the air. It was almost theatrical, and the audience held their breath. The pause was intentional, a quiet build-up to the part of the act that was the most challenging. The judges leaned forward, sensing that the peak of the performance was approaching. They whispered under their breaths, unsure if they should expect brilliance or a stumble. The family, watching anxiously from the side, squeezed each other's hands. There was pride, yes, but also fear. They knew the performance could only be as good as the child could manage in the pressure of the moment. As the act continued, the child began to expand their performance. The initial hesitancy melted away, replaced by a rhythm and confidence that captivated the audience. Notes or movements became bolder, more precise, and more expressive. The audience, now fully engaged, clapped lightly in rhythm or gasped quietly at a particularly impressive sequence. The judges' faces changed subtly, skepticism giving way to intrigue. They whispered to each other, noting that this child might be far beyond what they had imagined. Backstage, other performers and their families watched with awe. It was unusual for a child so young to command attention in such a mature way. The performance was not flashy or exaggerated. It was sincere, skillful, and emotionally engaging. Even the other contestants, who had been confident in their own abilities, paused to watch, realizing that what was happening on stage was extraordinary. The child's confidence seemed to inspire everyone in the room, drawing attention not through volume or theatrics, but through sheer competence and heart. The judges, now unable to hide their surprise, began to whisper softly among themselves. One noted the precision, another the emotional depth, and yet another commented on the timing and execution. All three recognized that this was not a typical child's performance. It was a display of years of practice, determination, and raw talent. Their pens, previously idle, began to jot down notes, though even they struggled to capture the full scope of what they were witnessing. As the performance progressed, the child introduced a subtle variation, something unexpected that added another layer to the act. The audience responded immediately, a collective intake of breath and soft clapping signaling that they recognized the cleverness and skill. The judges exchanged glances, a mixture of astonishment and delight. They had doubted the child just moments before, but now they were forced to rethink their expectations. The small performer had transformed from a nervous participant to the center of everyone's attention. The child's movements or notes carried a storytelling quality, a flow that connected the beginning of the act to the rising tension now visible in the audience. The family watched with tears in their eyes, overwhelmed by the realization that all the effort and support had led to this moment. The child was not only performing, they were communicating, making every person in the hall feel the intensity and emotion behind the skill. The connection between performer and audience grew stronger with each passing second, a bond that transcended age and expectations. As the act reached its midpoint, the child attempted a sequence that many would consider extremely difficult, even for adults. It required focus, timing, and confidence. The audience leaned forward, sensing the risk and the reward. A slight misstep could ruin the effect, but the child executed it flawlessly, drawing audible gasps and soft cheers. The judges were momentarily speechless, their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. The child had not only met expectations but exceeded them in ways that were impossible to ignore. From the front row to the back, the energy in the room shifted. What had started as polite curiosity became genuine fascination. Parents whispered to their children about the talent they were witnessing. Some audience members exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that something remarkable was unfolding. Even the performers waiting for their turn backstage seemed to forget their own nerves as they watched the young child command the stage with such authority. The child's performance was not just skillful but also emotive. Each movement, note, or gesture told a story, drawing the audience deeper into the act. The judges leaned in, trying to catch every detail, every subtle expression that conveyed passion and precision. They had seen many performances, but this was different. It was not about technique alone, nor about age. It was about presence, the ability to captivate and engage. The child's energy was contagious, spreading to every corner of the room. As the performance continued, the child's confidence grew with each successful sequence. What began as careful, measured steps became bold, expressive, and imaginative. The audience responded accordingly, clapping softly or whispering words of admiration. The judges could no longer hide their astonishment, exchanging looks of disbelief that slowly turned into smiles. Even those who had doubted the child could not help but feel the weight of the talent and dedication on display. Backstage, the family shared proud glances. Months of early mornings, late nights, and tireless encouragement had prepared this moment. They felt a deep sense of joy and relief as they watched the child not only perform but shine. The small performer had transformed into a figure of inspiration, proving that determination, talent, and heart could overcome doubt and expectation. The performance was far from over, but the audience and judges had already been won over. The initial skepticism had vanished, replaced by genuine admiration. Every movement, every note, every gesture reinforced the understanding that this was no ordinary act. It was a performance that would be remembered, a demonstration of skill, courage, and confidence that defied age and expectation. The child, standing center stage, took a small, deep breath, sensing that the next part of the act would be the most challenging. The audience leaned in, fully engaged, and the judges prepared themselves for what might be the most impressive sequence yet. For the first time, everyone realized that this 8-year-old had transformed the stage into a place where doubt could not survive, where skill and heart were the only measures of success. The quiet, nervous child had begun to show the world something extraordinary, and there was no turning back now. The child had now fully captured the attention of everyone in the hall. The initial doubts and quiet skepticism had melted away, replaced by a growing sense of awe. The judges, who had started the performance expecting disappointment, could no longer hide their astonishment. Even a single glance at each other communicated what words could not. Something extraordinary was happening. The audience, too, leaned forward, completely absorbed by the young performer in front of them. The child's movements had become smoother, each note or motion flowing naturally into the next. What had started as careful and measured had evolved into a display of skill, confidence, and artistry that seemed almost beyond the understanding of an 8-year-old. The audience watched in rapt attention, some whispering in amazement, others clapping softly in rhythm with the performance. The judges' pens, which had been idle or hesitant, were now actively jotting notes, yet even they struggled to capture the brilliance of what they were witnessing. From the sidelines, the child's family could barely contain their excitement and pride. They watched, breathless, as the months of preparation, dedication, and encouragement unfolded perfectly on stage. Every nervous night, every early morning practice session had led to this very moment. The child's expression, a mix of focus, joy, and determination, made the family hearts swell. They had known the child was talented, but seeing it recognized and appreciated in real time was overwhelming. The judges exchanged subtle nods and whispered observations. They commented on the precision, the timing, the emotional depth, and the creativity that the child displayed. One judge murmured about the maturity that the child seemed to possess, the ability to connect with the audience in a way far beyond their age. Another noted the complexity of the performance, acknowledging that it required an extraordinary amount of practice, talent, and courage. The skepticism that had once dominated the room was fading rapidly, replaced by genuine admiration. The child paused briefly, taking a small breath, and then shifted to a more difficult section of the act. This part was the true test, something that could easily overwhelm even a seasoned performer. The audience instinctively leaned forward, sensing the importance of this moment. A hush fell over the hall, with only the sounds of anticipation filling the air. The child's tiny figure seemed to expand, standing taller with every careful movement, every note that resonated through the room. As the child began this challenging sequence, there was a collective intake of breath from the audience. Every detail mattered, the timing, the rhythm, the expression. One wrong step or note could shatter the effect, yet the child executed everything flawlessly. The audience reacted instinctively, with gasps of surprise and murmurs of appreciation spreading through the hall. Even the judges, who had been critical and doubtful just moments ago, leaned in, captivated and fully engaged. They watched, unable to hide their astonishment, as the child performed with skill and poise that seemed impossible for someone so young. The performance was not just about technical ability. It was also about storytelling. Each motion or note carried meaning, creating a narrative that drew the audience in. The child's ability to convey emotion, passion, and dedication through the act made everyone feel connected. Parents held their children closer, whispering encouragement. Some audience members quietly encouraged the child, clapping softly or smiling in admiration. The judges, usually reserved and analytical, were caught in the magic, unable to resist being swept away by the performance. Backstage, other contestants watched with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Many of them had been confident in their own acts, believing that they would impress the audience and judges. Now, they realized that the small child on stage had captured something far more powerful: attention, admiration, and respect. Even those who had thought themselves superior could not deny the brilliance unfolding before them. The child's performance had transformed from a simple act into an inspiration, demonstrating what could be achieved with dedication and heart. The child moved seamlessly into a part of the performance that was especially demanding, requiring intense focus and precision. The audience held their collective breath, feeling the tension and excitement. Every motion was deliberate, every note perfectly timed. The child executed each sequence with grace and control, leaving the audience in awe. The judges, now completely engaged, scribbled notes furiously, but even they recognized that words could not fully capture the talent they were witnessing. The atmosphere in the hall changed completely. What had begun as polite curiosity turned into admiration, and finally into amazement. Every person in the room was captivated by the child's performance. The child's presence on stage commanded attention, not through volume or exaggeration, but through skill, confidence, and sincerity. The audience, judges, and even the performers waiting backstage were united in their recognition of something extraordinary happening before their eyes. The child's performance began to reach its peak. Every gesture, note, or movement conveyed not just skill, but also emotion and dedication. The audience responded instinctively, some clapping softly in rhythm, others whispering words of admiration. The judges leaned forward, captivated, exchanging looks of disbelief that slowly turned into smiles. They had doubted the child at first, but now they were witnessing a moment that defied expectations. The family, standing backstage, held each other tightly. Tears formed in their eyes as they watched the child perform with such confidence and skill. Every practice session, every sacrifice, every moment of encouragement had led to this moment. The child was not just performing. They were inspiring. The small figure on stage had transformed into a symbol of determination, passion, and talent that knew no age limits. The child continued with the act, pushing boundaries and exceeding expectations. The audience's energy grew with every passing second, clapping, gasping, and whispering in admiration. The judges, once skeptical, were now completely engaged, trying to take in every detail of the performance. They whispered to each other about the maturity, skill, and creativity displayed by someone so young. Even the performers backstage felt the impact, realizing that the child had created a performance that would be remembered long after the competition ended. The child's movements and notes carried a sense of story and emotion, connecting the beginning of the act to the rising tension in the room. The audience was fully immersed, experiencing the performance not just visually but emotionally. The judges, who had lost hope seconds before, were now completely captivated. The child had proven that age was not a measure of talent, and determination and heart could overcome even the most skeptical observers. As the performance continued, the child executed the most complex parts of the act flawlessly. The audience reacted with audible amazement, clapping and whispering in awe. The judges leaned forward, unable to hide their admiration, exchanging looks that communicated disbelief and respect. The child, small and seemingly fragile at the start, had become the center of attention, commanding the stage with confidence and grace. Backstage, the family shared proud smiles, feeling the culmination of months of hard work and dedication. They had seen the child struggle, practice, and persevere, and now it was all paying off. The audience and judges were witnessing something truly remarkable. The child's performance was a testament to what could be achieved with talent, focus, and belief in oneself. The tension in the room continued to build as the child approached the climax of the act. Every detail mattered, and every action was executed with precision and care. The audience leaned in, fully engaged, sensing that the most impressive part was about to unfold. The judges, who had once doubted, now watched in admiration, realizing that this performance would be remembered long after the competition ended. The child's energy and focus seemed limitless. What had begun as a careful, hesitant performance had transformed into a display of confidence, skill, and artistry that captured the hearts and minds of everyone in the hall. The audience responded with enthusiasm, clapping and whispering in admiration. The judges, fully captivated, recognized the extraordinary talent they were witnessing. The child had proven that determination, practice, and heart could overcome doubt, creating a moment that would stay with everyone who had seen it. As part 3 of the performance concluded, the child paused briefly, allowing the audience to absorb the brilliance of what they had witnessed. The judges leaned back, pens down, faces reflecting amazement and respect. The audience erupted into applause, some standing, some cheering softly, all acknowledging the incredible performance of this small but extraordinary performer. Backstage, the family and other contestants shared glances of admiration and pride, realizing that the child had not only met expectations but far exceeded them. The stage, once intimidating, had become a place of triumph, and the child had proven that hope, talent, and heart could shine against all odds. The hall seemed to hold its breath as the child moved into the final, most challenging part of the performance. The air was thick with anticipation, the audience leaning forward, captivated, and the judges watching intently, their expressions a mix of disbelief and awe. The child, small and focused, had grown from the hesitant figure who first stepped onto the stage into someone commanding attention with every movement, every note, and every gesture. Each action was deliberate and precise. The child's hands, fingers, and body moved with a fluidity that made everything appear effortless. The audience watched in silence, interrupted only by soft gasps of amazement or quiet applause at particularly striking moments. The judges, who had started the performance with skepticism, now sat upright, unable to look away. Their pens scribbled notes furiously, yet even the words on paper seemed insufficient to describe the skill and emotion unfolding before them. The child's performance was no longer about just impressing. It was about storytelling, conveying emotion, and creating a connection. Every movement and note seemed to tell a part of a story, drawing the audience in. The judges leaned in, trying to absorb every detail, while the audience became more invested, eyes glued to the stage, hearts beating in anticipation. Parents whispered to their children about the beauty and courage of the young performer, sharing the sense of wonder that filled the room. Backstage, the child's family held their breath, unable to look away. Months of preparation, countless hours of practice, and endless encouragement had led to this moment. They watched with pride, relief, and amazement as the child executed every complex part of the act with precision and grace. The small figure on stage had transformed into a force that commanded attention, filling the room with energy and emotion. The child paused briefly at a dramatic moment, allowing the audience to absorb the tension and beauty of what they were witnessing. This pause was intentional, a moment that made the next section of the performance even more powerful. The audience remained silent, captivated by the anticipation. The judges exchanged glances, their earlier doubts replaced with astonishment. They had lost hope seconds ago, but now they were witnessing a display of talent and courage that they could not ignore. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, the child launched into the climax of the performance. Every movement, every note, every expression was executed flawlessly. The audience reacted immediately, some gasping, some clapping softly, all caught up in the emotion and skill being displayed. The judges leaned forward, eyes wide, trying to take in the full scope of the act. The child, though small, seemed larger than life, holding the stage with confidence, precision, and heart. The performance reached a point where the child demonstrated skills that seemed impossible for someone so young. Complex sequences flowed effortlessly, executed with a level of mastery that left the audience and judges speechless. The energy in the room was electric, a mix of admiration, surprise, and excitement. Every person present seemed to feel the magnitude of what was happening, understanding that they were witnessing something truly remarkable. The judges, usually reserved and analytical, could no longer contain their astonishment. One whispered to another, commenting on the maturity and focus that the child displayed. Another noted the creativity, precision, and emotional depth. All three seemed captivated, unable to hide their admiration. The audience, too, responded instinctively, clapping, gasping, and leaning forward as the child continued to impress with each passing second. The child's expressions were as important as the technical skill being demonstrated. Every smile, every glance, every subtle movement added to the story being told through the performance. The audience became emotionally invested, experiencing the performance as much as watching it. Parents watched their children, hoping they would see the lesson in courage, perseverance, and the joy of achieving something extraordinary. The judges, too, seemed moved, recognizing that this was more than a performance. It was a display of heart, determination, and inspiration. Backstage, other performers paused, forgetting their own acts as they watched the child command the stage. They were inspired, realizing that talent, dedication, and courage could surpass expectation, regardless of age. The child had become a beacon of hope, demonstrating that focus, hard work, and passion could create moments that would be remembered long after the performance ended. As the performance continued, the child's movements and notes became even more expressive, reaching the pinnacle of skill and emotional impact. The audience was completely absorbed, clapping, whispering, and leaning forward as the climax unfolded. The judges could only watch in admiration, exchanging silent acknowledgments of the extraordinary talent before them. The child had taken what was once a quiet, underestimated figure and transformed it into the center of attention, leaving a lasting impression on everyone in the hall. The child executed a final, daring sequence that required focus, courage, and precision. The audience held their breath, recognizing the risk and reward of this moment. The child performed flawlessly, bringing the act to a stunning conclusion. The audience erupted into applause, some standing, some cheering softly, all overwhelmed by the unexpected brilliance of the young performer. The judges, previously doubtful, now wore expressions of complete admiration and respect. The child took a small bow, breathing deeply, a mixture of pride, relief, and joy on their face. Backstage, the family clapped and cheered, tears in their eyes. Months of preparation, countless sacrifices, and endless encouragement had led to this moment of triumph. The child had proven that skill, heart, and determination could overcome doubt and expectation. The audience continued to cheer, some standing, some clapping vigorously, all acknowledging the extraordinary performance. The judges, after a long moment of silence, began to speak, praising the child's talent, courage, and ability to captivate everyone in the room. Their words carried genuine admiration, a rare acknowledgement of a performance that had gone far beyond expectation. The child's small figure on stage had transformed into a symbol of hope and inspiration. The performance had captivated the audience, impressed the judges, and inspired other performers. The room seemed to vibrate with the energy of the moment, a shared understanding that something remarkable had occurred. Backstage, the family embraced, overwhelmed with pride. They had watched the child grow, struggle, practice, and now shine. The audience's applause, the judge's admiration, and the child's own sense of achievement combined into a powerful moment of recognition and celebration. The child's performance was complete, leaving everyone in the hall with a sense of wonder and inspiration. The stage, once intimidating, had become a place of triumph. The small performer had overcome doubt, fear, and expectation to create a moment that would be remembered. The judges, who had lost hope just seconds before, were now witnesses to a display of talent, heart, and courage that exceeded imagination. The applause continued, and the audience rose to their feet, a wave of admiration and appreciation that filled the hall. The child's family celebrated quietly, tears of pride streaming down their faces. Other performers, waiting for their turn, exchanged looks of awe and respect. The child had proven that with dedication, focus, and passion, anything was possible. As the room slowly quieted, the child stood center stage, taking in the recognition and applause. The judges nodded in approval, smiles of genuine admiration on their faces. The audience had witnessed a moment of extraordinary talent and heart. The child had shown that hope could be restored, that doubt could be overcome, and that even the smallest figure could create an impact larger than anyone expected. The story of the child's performance would be remembered, shared, and celebrated. The moment had transcended a simple act, becoming a lesson in courage, determination, and the power of believing in oneself. The child had taken the stage, faced doubt, and turned it into triumph, leaving everyone in the hall inspired and amazed. The applause continued long after the child had stepped back from the center of the stage. The energy in the hall was electric, a mix of excitement, admiration, and disbelief. Everyone present understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that went beyond the usual talent performances. The child, small and still catching their breath, had managed to captivate an entire audience and a panel of skeptical judges, leaving them in awe. The judges, who had started the event with doubt and hesitation, now leaned forward, smiles replacing the skepticism that had defined the first moments of the performance. They spoke with genuine admiration, praising not only the skill but also the courage, focus, and heart that the child had displayed. Their words resonated through the hall, reaching the audience and even the other contestants, who had watched quietly, many with wide eyes and jaws slightly open in disbelief. The child's family, standing to the side of the stage, embraced each other, tears streaming down their faces. Months of early mornings, late nights, and unwavering support had led to this moment. They had always believed in the child's talent, but seeing it recognized by the judges and appreciated by the audience was a feeling beyond description. Their hearts were full of pride, relief, and joy. Every small encouragement, every word of support, every moment of belief had contributed to this achievement. Other contestants, waiting for their turns or already finished, whispered among themselves, amazed at what they had just witnessed. Many of them had been confident in their own skills, but the child's performance had set a new standard. It was not just the technical ability that impressed everyone, but also the emotional connection and presence the child brought to the stage. The way the audience leaned in, the way the judges responded, and the energy that filled the room was undeniable proof that this performance was exceptional. Backstage, the organizers of the event exchanged glances, noting the rare occurrence they had just witnessed. A child so young, with such calmness and focus, had managed to surpass expectations and leave a mark on everyone present. They made quick notes for the announcement, acknowledging that this performance would be remembered, talked about, and possibly even celebrated for years to come. The child, still on stage, waved slightly to the audience, acknowledging the applause. There was a quiet pride in their expression, a mixture of relief and satisfaction. They had faced doubt, fear, and the weight of expectation, and they had overcome it. The small figure that had walked onto the stage earlier had now transformed into someone whose talent, courage, and heart were impossible to ignore. The audience's reaction did not diminish. People clapped, some stood, and others cheered softly. Whispers of admiration traveled through the crowd, with many commenting on how unexpected and extraordinary the performance had been. The energy in the room was contagious, and even those who had been initially skeptical found themselves caught up in the excitement and appreciation. The judges took turns speaking, offering detailed praise for the child's skill, precision, and ability to engage the audience. One judge commented on the complexity of the act and the courage it took to perform it flawlessly under pressure. Another noted the emotional depth and the way the child had connected with every person in the hall, creating a shared experience that went beyond mere talent. The final judge highlighted the dedication and discipline that had clearly been cultivated over months of practice and preparation. The child's family, still embracing each other, felt a wave of relief and happiness. The months of guiding, encouraging, and supporting the child had been worth every effort. They had always known that the child was capable of extraordinary things, but seeing it unfold in front of an audience and judges, in real time, was an indescribable feeling. Their pride was matched only by the joy of witnessing a dream realized. Other performers, though initially focused on their own acts, could not help but feel inspired. The child had set an example of what could be achieved with determination, focus, and heart. Even the older performers, who had years of experience, acknowledged the impact of the performance. The small figure on stage had proven that talent could shine brightly, regardless of age or size, and that dedication and passion could overcome even the most doubtful observers. The child stepped down from the stage, guided by a staff member, and met the family with a beaming smile. The embrace was tight, filled with emotion, and full of shared understanding of what had just been accomplished. The family whispered words of encouragement and pride, acknowledging the courage and skill it had taken to perform under such pressure. The child's eyes sparkled, reflecting both relief and the joy of having shown what they could do. In the following moments, the announcer invited the judges to give their final remarks. Each judge spoke carefully, acknowledging the remarkable achievement of the child. They highlighted the combination of skill, confidence, and emotional presence, noting that it was rare to witness such a complete and captivating performance from someone so young. The judges' praise was sincere, heartfelt, and unanimous, leaving no doubt about the extraordinary nature of the act. The audience continued to applaud, many standing in recognition of the child's achievement. The room was alive with excitement, admiration, and respect. The small figure who had once been underestimated had now proven themselves beyond expectation, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The energy of the moment was palpable, a mix of celebration, awe, and inspiration. Backstage, the child's family helped them gather their belongings, still overwhelmed by pride and joy. The child, though tired, could not stop smiling, feeling the fulfillment of months of effort and preparation. The journey had been long, filled with challenges and hard work, but it had culminated in a moment of recognition and success that would be remembered forever. The audience began to file out, still discussing the performance. Many spoke in hushed tones, sharing their astonishment and admiration. The child's name, though perhaps not widely known before the performance, was now being whispered and repeated with reverence. Social media posts and photographs were being shared, capturing the energy and excitement of the hall. The story of the performance would spread, inspiring others to believe in the power of dedication, courage, and talent. As the event continued, the child received congratulations from fellow performers, organizers, and fans alike. Each word of encouragement reinforced the understanding that the performance had made a significant impact. The child had not only impressed the judges and audience but had also set an example for others about what could be achieved with focus, practice, and determination. The judges, after a brief conference, formally recognized the child's achievement. Their remarks were detailed and thoughtful, emphasizing the combination of skill, emotional depth, and the ability to engage the audience. They highlighted the courage it took to perform in front of such a large crowd and the mastery demonstrated in executing a complex performance flawlessly. Their recognition was not just of talent, but of character, heart, and determination. The child and their family left the stage area, still surrounded by admiration and congratulations. The halls were filled with energy, and many attendees shared the story of what had been witnessed. The child's performance became the highlight of the competition, a moment that everyone would remember and speak of for years to come. The impact was clear. The child had not only performed but had inspired, touched hearts, and challenged expectations. As the day ended, the child reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The months of practice, the support of the family, and the belief in their own abilities had culminated in a performance that left a lasting mark. The story of the child's courage, skill, and determination would continue to inspire others, reminding everyone that hope could be restored, doubt could be overcome, and even the smallest figure could make an enormous impact. The judges, audience, and fellow performers had all been witnesses to something extraordinary. The child's name would be remembered, the story retold, and the performance celebrated. The journey from doubt to triumph had been complete, leaving a legacy of inspiration, skill, and heart that could never be forgotten. The child had shown the world, in the simplest and most powerful way, that talent, courage, and determination know no bounds, and that even the youngest performer can prove the impossible possible.